Hello and welcome to Jill Cameron Creations. Today we are doing a Slimline card and some watercoloring, and I'm using the Eucalyptus Fantasy stamp set by Pinkfresh Studio, and I'm using ARTEZA real brush markers. They are very similar and almost identical to the Zig Clean Color real brush markers. There are some color differences, and actually I have two sets. I have the ARTEZA ones and I have the Zig ones, and they complement each other very well. I like both sets of markers. I don't see any difference in how they perform. So I think the price point on the ARTEZA is really good. And of course, I'll link to that in my description and my products below, so you can see those and all the different options, because they come in a couple different sets. So I'll link to those below. So the first thing that I did was I went ahead and I stamped the border image that's there, and I stamped this and embossed it twice. I am stamping on watercolor paper. It's Strathmore watercolor paper. It's nothing fancy. You can pick it up at your local big box store. You can also, I'll link to it over on Blick Art as well. And then I am using gold embossing powder, and this is not like a bright brassy gold. This is more of a kind of an antiqued gold, and I will link to that as well. But anyway, so the one thing that about stamping and embossing on watercolor paper, make sure that you are definitely using your anti-static powder tool, and you want to make sure that you get really good pressure so that the image transfers really well. And I actually usually will stamp it twice just to make sure. And I had a little bit of still black ink on my stamp there, as you can see, but of course the gold absolutely covers all of that up, so it doesn't show up there, so don't worry about that. Now, when I started this card, I had this very specific idea in my head. Y'all saw the card sketch, and I had this idea in my head that how it was going to turn out and what it was going to look like, and it didn't turn out that way. It honestly didn't. It turned out a little bit different. I still love the end result, and I did not like the card until I put the sentiment on there. And I thought that I was going to scrap this card and I was going to start all over again 2 or 3 times as I was doing this. And it just happens to be one of those cards that I just didn't really like at first. And a friend of mine that I blog with, she actually posted something on Instagram today, and she's working on an art project, and she was talking about how she really didn't like it. And I remembered the thing that I always do when I'm doing like Copic coloring. I judge it in the middle, and I have to stop myself. And she was doing the same thing about how she didn't like it. And it was the middle of the project. It wasn't like it was the very beginning. It wasn't at the end of it either, but it's dead in the middle of this project. And when you're in the middle of a card project, whether you're doing Copic coloring, whether you're doing embossing, or you're putting stuff together, try not to judge it until you get it finished, and then make adjustments to it, because anytime anything is unfinished, you're not going to like it. Think about painting a bedroom. If you painted half of the bedroom and half of the wall, would you like it? Unless you're going for something really funky and artistic, probably not. Having an accent wall is way different than painting half a wall. That's just way different. So don't judge your card making until you have finished the card. If you finish the card and you still look at it and you don't like it, get somebody else to look at it, because I guarantee you it's still a pretty card. It doesn't matter. So anyway, that's my little rant about that. I left the embossing part in of melting the embossing powder, because seeing embossing powder melt never ever gets old. I love it. It is so cool. It is so pretty to see that go from this powdery substance to this beautiful metal looking stuff. Absolutely love it every single time. So if you notice here, I actually stamped everything, coated it in embossing powder, and then I am going to heat and set everything. I do all of my heat setting at one time. It saves time but it also warps your paper less because your heat tool is actually already warm. It's already really, really hot, so it doesn't take near as long, so your paper is less likely to warp. So keep that in mind. Now, I am using several different colors here of watercolor markers, and all I'm doing is dropping in color in the little spots where all the little flat leaves are and all the long leaves, and then I'm taking a water brush marker and just plain old simple water, and I am going over that area with that clean water that's in the brush. That's all I'm doing, and I am creating these very different colors, very dynamic colors. They get the hard line around the edge. Sometimes you don't like that hard line, but I really do like the hard line when it shows up around the edge of especially for embossing. It gives something extra to it. I really, really like how the watercolor of this turned out. So I did not include all of the watercolor in here, but it is super fast. I wish I could watercolor this fast. This particular card in the both panels and the wreath took me probably about 45 minutes to color everything in. I did have to take a break as I was doing this. So this is a little bit more time consuming than other cards. And I will say that this particular image, as I was coloring it, because it was gold on that cream colored background, I did have a hard time kind of distinguishing what was part of the stamp and what was part of the background on this. But after I got it all colored in, I did it correctly, and you know, as far as how the stamp was, I did it all right, and so yeah. Anyway, now doing the wreath was a little bit more straightforward in where everything was, and I tried to mix up the colors and you know, make them sporadic throughout that image. So I'm going to actually skip to the end of the painting of this because y'all see what I'm doing here. I'm going to let it go for just a second more, and then y'all see what I'm doing. I did the same thing for every single image there, and I just put the color down and mixed it with the water brush, and that was it. So we're going to skip to the end of coloring this wreath here. As we're going ahead and finishing up this wreath with the watercolor, just filling in the last little leaves here with my brush adds a little bit of some dark texture to some of those leaves and leave some of them just solid color. I'm going to go ahead also and die cut all of these images with the coordinating dies. This is the Eucalyptus Fantasy set by Pinkfresh Studios. I'm running them through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine. I have found that you might need to, just because watercolor paper is slightly thicker than, you know, your normal cardstock would be, I have found that I might need to run it back and forth maybe once or twice just to make sure that it cuts all the way through. So just keep that in mind, especially if you have a little bit older plates and you know you've used them a lot. Just keep that in mind when you're die cutting. And now I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment. The sentiment is also from this stamp set, and I'm stamping this on some Nina Desert Storm cardstock, and I'm using white embossing powder on this. Now, I fussed and fidgeted and thought I was going to put this on a regular size card, and I decided no, I'm going to put this on a Slimline card, and that's what I did. Now, Desert Storm cardstock, for whatever reason, no matter how I cut it, no matter what I cut it with, it always gets fuzzies on it. I've cut it with a guillotine, I've cut it with a paper trimmer, I have no idea, it gets fuzzies on it. But if you take a kind of rough paper towel, not a super soft one, but a kind of rough paper towel and run it on the edge of it, it'll take those fuzzies right off. No problems whatsoever. So quick little tip from me to you. Now I'm just going to go ahead and stamp the, I'm stamping that same like border image on 4 different places on down this panel here. It's a Slimline card. My measurement is 4 1/4 by 9 inches. And I am just stamping this in Versamark ink. I'm not going to emboss it or anything like that. I'm just stamping it on the background so it has that texture to it, but it's not actually that image like standing up and going, oh, hey, pick me, pick me. I did not like the wreath on top of the border images without anything in between them. It was just way too busy because I colored them, you know, I had them the same color. I think maybe if I had colored them, watercolored them in like maybe some grays, it would have been a little different. But I did not like that those two things were together. So to still go with the same thing and not scrap what I did, I went ahead and die cut the same image, using the same die. I die cut them out of some heavy vellum paper. Ignore my scrap paper there. In order for when I run everything through my die cut machine, if it's something delicate like mirrored cardstock or vellum, and I don't want it to have the pattern from the top plate or the bottom plate, I put typing paper around it. And that way it doesn't get that pattern in it and doesn't look all messy. Vellum is notorious for showing adhesive. No matter what you do, it shows adhesive. So I put liquid adhesive around on the outside edges and in the white places on the actual watercolor paper, just on the very edges of everything, and then on a few spots in the middle there. And I'm using the Elmer's Glue All glue, and I put the vellum paper on top of it. It didn't really show. I was very surprised by that. Usually you get like that more clear look on it, like brightens it up and it's like this big spotlight on it. It didn't. You'll see it in the final pictures. It just didn't really show up. I was kind of amazed by it. Okay, so I'm going to finish putting this card together. You'll see all of that. Don't forget to head over to my blog so you can check out any other tips and tricks that I share about this. And also I have links to my classes that I have, Card Making 101. I'll also link to that in the description below, but everything is also linked over on my blog. There is also the Card Maker Society that you can check out that has, I'll link to the informational page for that so you can check it out. And the technique for this month is actually for making Father's Day cards. So it's all about making masculine cards for this month. So I definitely urge you to go ahead and check that out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel here. That's the important thing so that you do not miss a single episode. I am doing 30 days of cards in the month of June, and next month we will be doing Christmas in July. Woohoo! My friend Brandy has a class that she's also doing. It's going to be a live workshop that's going to be a Christmas in July theme too. I will link to that. And it is over, I think I sent it out in an email. So if you have, definitely send it out in an email again. But if you have if you're not signed up for my newsletter, head over to my blog and sign up for my newsletter so you can get all of those types of things. Because I know a lot of crafters, obviously, and we'll be doing lots of card classes and things in the future, especially when it gets towards Christmas and doing Christmas cards, because those are always fun. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed the Slimline card using some Pinkfresh stuff. Have a great day. Thanks.